Hello, my name is Carol Hawley. I'm the Region 5 Assistant Feeding Coordinator for Florida Baptist Disaster Relief. This is our online training, and we'd like to welcome you and thank you for participating in this training. The purpose is to provide you with information for safe food handling at disaster relief sites. This includes both mobile feeding units as well as in borrowed kitchens. Overview, we're going to talk about hazards to food safety, personal hygiene, gloves and work attire, miscellaneous considerations, food flow at disaster relief sites, and safe cooking in a borrowed kitchen. Florida Baptist Disaster Relief has never had a reported case of foodborne illness. That's why this is so important, and the training is what makes us be able to say that. So here we go. There's hazards to food safety. There's biological, chemical, and physical, as well as deliberate and allergens. Why they occur: poor food handling, improper storage, the wrong temperature, cross-contamination, or poor personal hygiene. Biological hazards. This is the cause of most foodborne illnesses. The pathogens of greatest concern are viruses, bacteria, parasites, and fungi. Pathogens of greatest concern is viruses. They don't grow in food, they grow on people. And we've learned a lot about viruses this year. They survive freezer temperatures, and they contaminate the food and the water. One particular nasty one you've probably heard of in cruise ships is the norovirus, and a lot of times that is because people are using their bare hands and grabbing drinks out of ice, and don't do that. Mitigating the viral threat. You must wear gloves when you retrieve things, and let me just say, please, do not blow into your glove to make it easier to put on. You've now put all those germs inside. You probably put them on the outside. I teach that, and I've never actually seen anybody do that, but I was at a food truck, and the guy at the food truck did that. Gross. Do not blow into your gloves. Ice that's used to chill canned drinks and water must never be used to prepare food. Church picnics, I've seen this. They'll have cans of soda in ice, and someone decides they want to put ice in their cup, and they're going to grab ice out of it. Don't. It's not food safe at that point. If you have any kind of symptoms like vomiting, diarrhea, fever, nausea, abdominal cramps, you need to isolate and keep the sick away from the work site. Don't be a martyr. The pathogens of greatest concern are bacteria. There's salmonella from eggs and poultry. You can see I can't even pronounce that, Bacillus cereus, cooked vegetables and rice. Listeria from deli meats and hot dogs. E. coli we've heard a lot about from meat and produce. And botulism. One thing that surprised me when I first took this training is baked potatoes. If you have a large baked potato and don't cool it quick enough, you actually can get botulism from it. Mitigating the bacterial threat. We use food safe supply source. When we're feeding survivors, we do not accept donations from people making things in their home kitchen. We only do it from a food safe supply source so we can guarantee the safety of it. Proper storage and temperature control, proper cooking temperature, avoiding the time temperature abuse, which we'll talk about, proper sanitation and hygiene, and avoiding cross-contamination. The pathogens of greatest concern are parasites, yuck, found in contaminated food and water. On a lot of the sites when we go, they will not have a safe water. From Panama City had no water in the whole town. So we bring in potable water. If you have a boil alert, we don't use that water. We bring in our own water. So that's very important. Mitigating the threat of parasites, use only potable water. for everything, and no local produce, because we don't know how they watered that, if they've used local water and it's not safe. So we just try and make sure we have safe food. The pathogens of greatest concern, another one is molds or fungi. Blue cheese is okay, though I don't know why you would want to eat it, but that is acceptable. But otherwise, it can cause illness, it spoils food. Coolness will not slow it. It'll slow it, but it won't necessarily kill it. I had a loaf of bread that was perfectly fine. I was going out of town. I put it in my freezer. When I went to take it out, it was green. Mold had grown in the freezer. So mitigating the mold threat, discard any food that has mold unless it's like blue cheese that's supposed to be that way. Yeast, you can tell, spoilage, it'll smell like alcohol. I've seen jellies before that have the white or pink on top of it. I know growing up, we just scraped it off. If it's got white or pink, when in doubt, throw it out. Because if it's growing on top, it's probably throughout the whole jelly. Mitigating the yeast fungi threat, if the food appears or smells suspicious, throw it out. When in doubt, throw it out. It's not worth trying to save a few pennies and end up someone getting sick. So now we're going to talk about chemicals. The hazards are in cleansers, detergents, soaps, bleach, sanitizers, oven cleaners, equipment, fuels, and oils, bug sprays, and toxic metal. None of those sound good to be in your food. Preventing the contamination. Store chemicals away from food, utensils, and equipment. If they must be stored near food, they should always be on the bottom shelf, and they should not touch food. Ensure that they're properly labeled. Do not take something that's had chemicals and then put food in it. Never mix chemicals. Any of you that's done science know, or has science, you know you don't put chlorine, bleach, and ammonia together. So don't mix chemicals. Use caution when using them, especially when it's around where food will be prepped. And only use equipment made for food handling. Okay, physical. This is very important. Nobody wants to look down at their food and see somebody's false eyelash floating in their food or someone's hair that's not their color. So, physical hazards can be hair, fingernails, false eyelashes. Please don't wear false fingernails. Those can break off. Also, it's better to keep your fingernails short. They're easier to keep clean. Dirt, jewelry. The only jewelry that we allow is a plain wedding band. I have had earrings, and I went to take them off and realized the stud was gone and the backing was still stuck to my ear. So no jewelry except a plain wedding band. You can have paper, metal shavings, staples, bones, shells, and fruit pits, which occur naturally, and bugs and pests. So, preventing having physical hazards in your food. You carefully inspect the food, use care to keep contaminants out of the food, and do not hit the edge of the cans on a tilt skillet. The tilt skillet, to me, it looks like a feeding trough. And that's where we heat our food up, and they don't like being hit. Plus, you could also be knocking off little shards of metal into the food. So you can use a spatula to remove the food from the can, but don't. I know at home you probably hit the side of your pot, your spoon at the side of the pot. Don't do that at Disaster Relief. Remove all jewelry, or better yet, leave it home. Except, like I said, you are allowed a plain wedding band. Your badge should be tucked into a pocket or down your shirt. We had one lady who's been doing disaster relief feeding for a long time, and she said one time she looked down and half her badge was missing. She never did find it. She had no idea where. That's why your badge is tucked away. If it does break off, it's going to be in your pocket and not in food. and clean and sanitize surfaces often. It's kind of like hand washing. I don't think you can do it too much. Okay. Now we get to something that in our world today we have to be concerned about is deliberate contamination. It could be acts of terror or vandalism. We have what's called on-site management, OSM, that patrols the area to keep us safe, but also everyone needs to be aware. If that's why we wear these bright yellow shirts, and we'll have a yellow hat to let you know that we belong there. If you see anything suspicious, you need to report it to your blue hat or to the white hat, which is in charge over everything. The ERT is now called OSM, which is on-site management, because they do so much more than just emergency response. They're actually there to keep us safe and make sure things move smoothly. Common allergens. This is becoming more of a problem that we have to be concerned with. The main 8 are dairy foods, wheat, soy products, eggs, fish and shellfish, peanuts, and tree nuts. I have a grandson that has an extreme peanut allergy, and he's almost died a couple times. So we need to take that seriously. We need to know what's in the food so we can tell people so they can make wise choices. So we need to clean and sanitize all the equipment and the prep areas between different foods. We need to wash our hands and change our gloves. And we don't put different kind of cookies on the same parchment, because sometimes just the fact of having a little peanut butter, like if you make peanut butter cookies and that oil is on that paper, and then you put a sugar cookie on it, it's now picked up that peanut, and sometimes that little bit is enough to set off a reaction in someone extremely allergic. So we need to be very cognizant of that. Don't add anything to what you're cooking unless the blue hat okays it. Basically, we're not exactly cooking, we're mostly opening cans and reheating. So unless your blue hat tells you to add something, basically you're going to dump the can and you're going to heat it, and that's it. It's good if you keep a label off of each of the can, because someone may come up and say, I have this allergy, is this going to be in the food? We've also tried to give, when the Red Cross goes out and delivers the food, we've been trying to give them a label too, so if someone asks them, they can say, this is what's in this food. Okay, now to personal hygiene. Okay, if I had a glove on, everything that's in my hair is now on this glove. So anytime you can contaminate food by scratching your scalp, running your fingers through your hair. As we've learned this year and last, people touch their face without even thinking about it. And we need to not do that. Touching your ears, nose, or face, touching others, if you cough or sneeze, if you have a dirty uniform, apron, or gloves, and spitting, and I just think that's gross, so don't do that. Okay, we've learned for the past year and then this year how to wash your hands, and we're going to talk about when to wash them and other hand care issues. How to wash your hands. If you don't already know this, Disaster Relief has been telling you this for years. Preschool teachers know this, so I hope you do too, but we're going to review it. Is wet your hands and arms, water temperature about 100, it needs to be warm. Apply the soap, scrub your hands, wrists, and arms for 20 to 30 seconds, which is more than most people. Most people just go like that and they're done. But 20 to 30 seconds, rinse it thoroughly. Take a single-use paper towel, dry your hands thoroughly, keep the paper towel, use that to turn off your water faucet and open your door and then get it out. Because if you've ever been in a ladies' restroom, there's a lot of people that do not wash their hands, which means everything that was on their hands is now on the doorknob. So keep your paper towel to open the door. Once you're out, then you can throw it away. When to wash your hands. It should be a no-brainer. Like I said, I've seen people not. After using the restroom, before and after handling any food, after touching your hair, body, or face, after touching a baby or someone else, after sneezing, coughing, or using a tissue, after eating, drinking, smoking, and we're not allowed to smoke, so you don't even have to worry about that, after handling any chemicals, or after taking out the garbage. Now, if you want to wear gloves to take out the garbage just so your hands aren't going to get yucky, once you're done, take those gloves off, wash your hands, put clean gloves. After clearing tables, after touching clothing or aprons, after handling money, after touching anything that would contaminate your hands. Now, when we're saying you don't, one of the things not wearing jewelry is you don't wear a watch, which means people are going to want to look at their cell phone. And I won't even discuss how many germs are probably on your cell phone. So if you take your cell phone out of your pocket and you look at it and you've got gloves on, you need to put, when you're done, put it back in your pocket, throw the gloves away. They're only one-time use only, and wash your hands and put on clean gloves. Hand sanitizers. That is only used after washing and thoroughly drying your hands, and it's not ever to be in place of washing your hands. Fingernails should be short and clean, no fingernail polish, which can flake off, and no false fingernails. If you have a sore, it needs to be properly bandaged and covered. If it's very extensive, you might want to talk to the blue hat, and they may just tell you to set out or to put you in a different area. At this point in the training, we would usually do a hand washing exercise, which I'm sad you can't do. But what we would do is we have this fluorescent liquid we put on our hands, and you rub it in, and then you go and you wash your hands. And I've taught preschool for 18 years, and I've been doing feeding for a long time, so I thought, I've got this. I know how to wash my hands. So I'm just, washing it. Well, then you put it under fluorescent light, and guess what? Little orange showed up in the cracks, in the wrinkles in my fingers, around your nail beds. And so that's why we use gloves, because even though you're washing your hands, it's hard to get them really clean unless you're going to do like the doctors and use a scrub brush. Okay, so now we're going into what you're going to be wearing. We're going to talk about gloves, the mandatory use of gloves, recommended use, and when to change your gloves. The other thing about gloves is do not put these in your pocket for a later date. When you do, they've got lint, fuzz, who knows what else has been stuffed in your pockets. You pull them out of the box right before you put them on. Try to touch them as little as possible and mostly at the edge. You must wear gloves anytime you touch ready-to-eat food. That's food like salads, things that are not going to be cooked. When you touch the outside of a Cambro liner, which we'll talk about what a Cambro is later, and when you're serving food. Recommended uses are when you're temping food. In disaster relief, we make sure all our food is up to 165 degrees. So we have thermometers we put in and temp it. It's good to wear gloves then. When you're scooping the food out into the Cambros, anything that's sticky or messy, greasy, it's just easier to have gloves on. When you're using chemicals, it's good to wear gloves. And like I said, these are one-time things. We have plenty of gloves. You do not wash your gloves. When they go on, when you're done with them, you take them off and they go in the trash, you get a clean pair. So when you change tasks, say you're making cookies and then, now you're going to be working with meat, you change gloves. When your gloves are soiled or torn, if your hands are sweating inside, that's a good time to change your gloves. After touching any contaminated surface, which includes putting your hands in your pockets. I was at one training and the guy, his pants were too loose and he kept pulling them up, and I go, okay, you got to change your gloves. Go get a belt and find a rope. But anytime you touch anything that's not food or related to serving food, like the utensils, pots, things like that, you need to change your gloves. And at least every 15 minutes. If you need to wash your hands, you need to change your gloves. The one thing that's very important is when you're working on the convection ovens, they get extremely hot. You do not want to wear anything plastic around them. You don't want to wear plastic aprons or plastic gloves. And do not ever put plastic gloves under oven mitts, because if there happens to be a hole, enough heat can get through and you'll basically be melting it onto your skin. So around the convection oven, it's always cloth. Work attire, hats and aprons. Any type of hat is acceptable that's been sold by DR. We used to sell visors. You may still wear a visor, but you will have to wear a hairnet with it when you're in the food prep or the serving areas. You can wear clean caps or hairnets by non-credentialed volunteers. Beard covers are supplied for a person in the food prep. I just shave mine off so that I don't have to worry about it. I want to share a story. I was in a convention and it wasn't Florida Baptist, but they were serving food, and there was a gentleman who had a very short beard, and he was serving food without a beard net. Well, I went and got my plate and looked down, and there was this little tiny hair, very stiff, actually matched the color of his beard on my plate. So that's why we ask you to wear beard nets. Some have just decided to just shave theirs before they come. That's an option too. But we want the food to be safe. We don't want anybody's hair in the food. Aprons. We have cloth and plastic ones. Must be worn while you're preparing or serving food. You wear the cloth aprons, never plastic when you're working in convection ovens. You remove the aprons when you're taking the garbage out, when you're leaving the food prep area, and when you're going to the restroom. We do have disposable plastic aprons. If you're wearing that and you want to wear that to take out the trash to keep your clothes clean, that's perfectly fine, but you need to throw it away and wash your hands and get a clean one before you come back to food prep. Okay, at this time we're going to stop midway. This is a 2-part session. You need to watch both parts. At the end there will be some questions. When you answer those, that's your attendance for the day to show that you've taken this class. We want to thank you again, and in a few minutes we'll continue on with part 2 of Safe Food Handling. Thank you.